Knock knock. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Interrupting cow.
Interrupting cow.
Moo! Live from New York, it's Henry's interview live. Today's topic is the Great Recession. I'm here with my guest. Would you like to tell everybody your name?
Sure, Henry. My name is Joe Seidel.
Welcome, Joe. And where are you from?
Huntington Woods, Michigan.
Wow, representing the H-Dub. How old were you in 2009, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it's, slightly difficult answer, but I was 40.
Wow, great sense of humor you got there. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions about before the events of 2008, 2009, also known as the Great Recession. What do you recall about your financial life before the Great Recession?
I recall not being too concerned that anything was going in any negative direction. So just going through life, young kids, young family, new house, things like that. So I recall not being too focused on it.
So you were not focused on, finding or keeping your job or finding or buying a home. Everything was comfortable.
Pretty much.
Good. Had you had any experienced economic hardships at all before 2009?
No, not really, but I think that like many people, we may have been riding for a fall a little bit with a false sense of security in terms of the assets in your house and some of the ways you were able to pull money out and things like that. So I think people had a false sense of more wealth than they really had.
Yeah, because people didn't have savings.
Perhaps.
And then I'm going to ask you some questions about how the Great Recession kind of happened and were you anticipating it. So my first question is, how did you discover that the nation was going under this economic hardship?
I think the moment it really hit me was I had a life change where I was getting divorced and we'd put our house on the market, and we realized that the house, what we owed on the house, was actually not what it was worth anymore.
Oh.
So all of a sudden, when a house gets appraised, it has to appraise for the amount of money that you've maybe borrowed on it.
Yeah.
And
so
that wasn't the case. Those did not coincide. It ended up working out for me very well, but in the meantime, it was a reality check that people thought their house was worth so much more than it was. And I think at that very moment, I realized that things had taken a dramatic change.
Wow. So it really just hit you like...
It was real.
Yeah.
It was real.
What emotional response did you or your family have to it?
Well, I think that my ex-husband and I were going through a time where we're trying to negotiate and work through the finances, and it was an interesting time to be doing that given what was happening in the financial world.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, it actually all worked out, but it was new, uncharted waters that we were all navigating.
Wow. And then what happened to your extended family, neighbors, friends? Did you know what was going on with them at the time?
Yeah, I think people kind of stuck to their own. People don't talk about their finances, certainly not in our community. But I think what became very apparent, and it was in the housing market, that there were people that maybe wanted to move from a smaller home to a larger home, or even move out of Huntington Woods, and everyone was stagnated because of that discrepancy between how much houses were really worth and how much you actually owed on the home. And those did not end up getting back in balance for a good long time.
Wow. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you some questions about how our government reacted to it. What did you think of President Bush's and Congress' reaction to the Great Recession?
I think it was a slow burn. I don't think that there were great responses. I think ultimately the responses were more in line with, some of the TARP funding, some of the Obama initiatives, which had to do with the banks, which, there's a lot of feelings about how the bank situation was handled. But I think that's when we were in true crisis. When I think of Bush, I think of 9/11, and I think of, I think of more national reaction to the ultimate realization that we weren't safe.
Yeah.
And that 9/11 happened, and it changed our whole, it was a paradigm shift. So when I think of Bush, I don't necessarily think of the Great Recession as much as I think of other things.
Wow.
I actually think and this could be wrong, I'm sure obviously he did a lot and Congress did a lot during that time, and maybe it was my lack of focus on the politics of it, but I felt more emotionally tied to the political response later.
So then now fast forwarding to a different president, how do you think that 2008 has influenced the present?
Well, I think, and I go back to the statement I was just making, that so with Obama and the banks and the automotive bailouts, I mean, that to me, that was something that I was incredibly aware of. And actually, from a business standpoint, I actually benefited from it. It just so happened in my business, I was able to, it stimulated some economies, which helped me personally. But I was disgusted by the fact that the banks were bailed out and the people at the top of the corporate ladder were not sent to jail. Were not handcuffed in front of everyone and walked out the door, and they walked out with their bonuses and didn't seem to be impacted personally the way most of America was. And when you ask the question, how does the political environment, how is it influenced possibly today, is I think that's the influence. I think people looked at that and are still looking at that and saying, we gotta end this. We gotta end this, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and we've lost the middle class, and where's the people looking out for the real people in the United States? And I think that was the theme. That was the Bernie Sanders theme, that was the Trump theme, and people have had it. People are sick of it. So I think that the Great Recession, if that's what you're gonna call it, the Great Recession was what I believe led us to today. People are sick of it.
Thank you. Thank you for enlightening us with your perspective. It was great to have you here, and have a great night, everybody.